the world changes. I think that's, I mean, like, was there a time when the US was the best? Perhaps.
Yeah.
Right? It's gone. When it was perhaps the best country in the world, there was no competition. And they rested on those laurels too long. They weren't competitive. Well, this is the result of decades and decades of saying we don't have to be competitive. The rest of the world went, particularly here in Asia, where they think in generations, not in election cycles. They said, okay, we will be an alternative to the United States. And now the day is here. And that means more options for you.
In order to build wealth, you might have to leave the country. At least that's what our friend Andrew says. At Wealth Nation, in this video today, we aren't just going to talk about life insurance. Let's talk about citizenship insurance, shall we?
Now, Andrew, you coined the phrase, go where you're treated best. How has that evolved over the years for you? Or what does that mean?
Go where you're treated best, and thank you for having me, means that you shouldn't settle for things based on where you're born. My father unwittingly said those 5 magic words, as I called them, back when I was 12 or 13 years old. And he told me, he said, listen, the direction of our country, the United States, is changing. And he was very prescient in this regard. He predicted a lot of what's happening right now. And he said, don't think you have to stay here in the same city or in the same state as many of your friends have been told they have to, because they have to take care of their parents. He said, listen, we're going to take care of ourselves. You take care of yourself. And you, as a young aspiring entrepreneur, are probably going to find, when you reach adulthood, better places to do business. Asia's coming up. This is back in the 90s. Other places may be coming up. You ought, forget staying in the same city or state. You don't even have to stay in the same country, he said. You should go where you're treated best. And it was a permission slip that I think a lot of people, certainly around, where I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, rather traditional place. Everybody figured, hey, when my parents turn 65, I'm going to take care of them. And my parents said, listen, it's not our children's job to take care of us. It's our job to prepare. My dad was in the financial business and dealt with insurance and that kind of stuff. He said, listen, we'll take care of ourselves. Our kids should live for themselves. And he really thought that the U.S. would head in the wrong direction. And if you look at the economic freedom rankings, if you look at the peace rankings, if you look at so many of the indices that are out there now, I mean, the U.S. has been getting worse and worse. The year I was born, The Economist labeled the U.S. the best place to be born, 1984. And you could probably agree with that. It probably was one of the best places to be born, alongside West Germany. Not so true anymore. In fact, where I'm sitting right now in Malaysia scores pretty closely to where the U.S. scores. They don't do that study so often anymore, but when they do, Malaysia scores pretty closely. So my father spoke to, that's what's going to happen. And he was looking at Chile and he was looking at New Zealand before a lot of other people were.
That's awesome.
Thank you for sharing that. And the cheeky, question that I kind of have for you is like, the United States is the best country on earth. And you just addressed that, right? Sarcasm, right? It's the best country on earth. Why would somebody like yourself just want to renounce their citizenship and say, peace out, I can figure something else out?
Well, the average person doesn't renounce their citizenship.
Of
I mean, there's estimated to be something like 10 million Americans who live overseas, and it is record numbers, but tens or 4 figures, low 5 figures every year choose to give up their citizenship. Neither of those statistics, of course, they know everybody who's doing that. But most people who move overseas just move overseas. They keep their U.S. citizenship. Maybe they have a dual citizenship that they've earned by living somewhere, or maybe they were born somewhere else, came to the U.S. and now they're going back. I mean, there's all kinds of situations. But no study says the United States is the best. It's not even the number 1 in obesity anymore. It is number 1 in prisoners per capita, beats China. I mean, that's about it. So I think that, listen, I'm all for having emotions and I'm all for feeling a connection. I mean, when I traveled all over Southeast Asia, for example, I felt better here in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, than I did in Bangkok or I did in other places people often move. And so one of my homes around the world is in Kuala Lumpur. And in part, it's because it feels better. Now, I'm all for people saying, I like living in the United States. Now, the difference between they and I is I've traveled to over 100 countries. I've lived in a dozen of them. I have investments. I have homes. I've really digged in. So when I say, hey, Bangkok isn't as nice for me as Kuala Lumpur, I've actually spent, substantial time there. I have friends there. I understand a little bit about the culture. And I'm not just speaking from someone who wants it to be true. people often ask me, isn't it sad what's happening to the United States? Isn't it sad what's happening to a lot of countries in the West that are just going in the wrong direction? I don't look at it that way. And I think that maybe my superpower is not being so nostalgic. I live in the moment.
Mhm.
And I really kind of felt reborn when I moved overseas. And whatever happened before that, I don't really look back so much on that. I think that what happens in the world is what happens, and we can choose to be sad about it, or we can choose to accept it. And I think a lot of people right now in the US are struggling. What interests me, germane to what you guys talk about, is how many people who are 60 years old come to my YouTube channel and watch Live Like a King, for example. We do luxury living all over the world. We show Medellin, Colombia, and Oman, and all these places that you wouldn't think you could live like a king. And they say, well, that's great for you with all your money, with you. If you have $1 million, like, well, if your country's the best country in the world and you're 60 years old, that you would have had to put like $200 a month in the S&P 500 to be a millionaire. Either you're just dumb or the country isn't so great. I mean, if you get to say, it just doesn't make sense. So what it is people feel it's great. And they don't even feel it's great. They just feel afraid of the other options. But there's something in particular about the United States. We're at the sushi restaurant last night here in Kuala Lumpur. A friend of mine came in, and we meet some this guy's 5 bodyguards with him. And he invites us to drink his sake and eat and everything else. And he's talking about Malaysia. Never once do I get the sense he thinks Malaysia is better than any other country. Yeah. He just likes it. But he also likes to go other places. There's something about Americans that the marketing has worked too well, where they think everybody else sucks. And that's, for example, what my Live Like a King series was about, was showing you, hey, you can live very well in places like Malaysia, and you can eat caviar and drink champagne, or you can go to Taco Bell. But let's drop the act.
I love it.
Right. Now, so when it comes to the United States, it reminds me of Plato's allegory, where everybody thinks that it's great because they haven't left. Yeah. It's amazing because of the news that we watch, which is the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. So every other country that is exposed to us via TV or the internet is a one-sided thing. But when you go to some place like Medellin, which is amazing, by the way, one of my favorite places in the world. What is your criteria for picking a place to stay? You have a place in Serbia, you're in Kuala Lumpur, you're in Bogota. What's your criteria?
I partially realized being 40 and doing self-development work is partially, I operate to some extent on just how do I feel and what are the feelings. And I think I'm pretty good at ascertaining without necessarily putting numbers on everything. What works. I went to Serbia and just felt there was some really, undervalued property. So I owned an apartment in, I think, the best part of Serbia. Then we bought an office. We used to have a bigger team in Serbia, so we bought an office. And now the office is, close to doubled in value. Serbia is not as fast growing as some places in Asia, but I felt like, okay, regional hub of, former Yugoslavia in, the Western Balkans in Europe. Europe is suffering, certain things. And I just felt a number of factors like this is a place that's more personally free. It's going to go up. Some things that you can look at technically are, tax rates. When I chose to move to Malaysia, I didn't realize they had a pretty friendly tax system. They have a territorial tax system. Now, if you're an American, it's a little bit harder to play with. But let's say you're Canadian, you come here and your company is in Hong Kong. You can theoretically pay zero tax when your company is. You can pay zero tax in Malaysia. And so tax rates are something. And I think that kind of connects to a feeling of openness. I found that more open feeling places tend to have lower tax rates, tend to have easier immigration. Malaysia is a pretty straightforward country to immigrate to. You put some money in the bank, they want you to move here. Asian countries, if you can deposit your wealth with them, they are mostly interested in allowing you to move there. So I think that's positive. Listen, Trump's coming out not so long ago with this gold card thing for $5 million. Absolutely terrible deal. $5 million to not even get citizenship instantly. Terrible deal in the global marketplace of citizenships as someone who does this. But I respect, for what it's worth, the idea of, hey, we have a commodity. Let's be competitive with it. And so I think that the countries that say that are worthwhile. And so there are, legacy brand European countries that everyone thinks, oh, they're high tax, they're over. Italy, Greece, for example. Yeah, they're not heading in the right direction, but you can move there and pay very low taxes as a foreigner because they realized, you know what, we got to do something to bring some money into this place. Whereas Spain, for example, hasn't been so open to doing that. Germany's heading in the wrong direction. They're not doing that. So, I look at who is saying we need to be competitive as a factor. Where else do you want to choose to live? I mean, you have to feel good. I think there's this misconception that all I do is chase tax rates around the world. We've helped clients move to, close to 36 different tax-friendly countries, whether it's 0 in the Cayman Islands, whether it's a territorial system like here, whether it's a lump sum system like in Italy and Greece, where you just pay us $100,000 a year, and that's all, make as much as you want. Whether it's a non-dom system in Ireland where you only pay on the money you bring into the country. There's lots of ways to get your tax rate to 0 or to the single digits. Again, harder if you're an American, but still possible. We help Americans pay 10% less. And I just think there's so many competitive places out there. You want to look at the tax rates. You want to look at going in the right direction. You want to personally feel free. Soft freedom in places like Malaysia is higher. I don't care what's written down in the U.S. Constitution. They don't follow it. So soft freedom and a culture of just leaving people alone is good. And there's lots of choices to pick from in that, but you're probably not going to be picking from a place that was like a name brand. And I think for a lot of Americans in particular, that's a problem. The United States is a brand. It's Coca-Cola, right? They have that Coca-Cola Red, and it continues to thrive, not because it's the best thing to drink, because it has a brand. More people around the world realize that and are going elsewhere. More people around the world are realizing that and staying in their own countries if they have money because they're seeing more opportunities. But if you're an American, you're probably going to move to a place if it meets the feelings, the taxes, and the freedom that you haven't heard about.
And I couldn't agree more. And what I want to say too, what I feel like what you do such a great job on the Nomad Capitalist YouTube channel is like you literally break it down country by country. And especially the Live Like a King series, I have absolutely loved watching it because we love Colombia and we've never been to Bogota. And so when we saw the city from your perspective, it was like, damn, we need to go to Bogota. So it was a really phenomenal perspective to just see a different aspect of, like you said, it's not just about taxes. It's not just about this financial game that we're all playing. It's about, exactly like you say, go where you're treated best. How can I live the best quality of life? And pick my geography. And what we notice, especially with a lot of the Wealth Nation clients, many of our clients are able to work more remotely. Many of them are creating new businesses. And, really we've been able to see this shift from them going from the traditional W-2 employee, funding and maxing out your 401k to now thinking as a business and becoming entrepreneurs. And with the Wealth Nation channel, as you know, we're always talking about own your own lifestyle. And we feel like you I say to the extreme in loving terms, like you have taken that to like the extreme where we're like, man, we didn't even think about geography being something that we need to take into consideration, right? Yeah. Because we've always been focused on these financial tools and it's like, man, get the hell out of Dodge. Maybe we can do that too. So with that perspective, can you walk us through like the discovery zone of somebody who's just watching this and is like, hey, dual citizenship? Why would dual citizenship even benefit me from a tax perspective, knowing that I'm still technically owing the United States taxes wherever I go?
Yeah, and I think that obviously this is, particularly if you're an American, easiest if you're an entrepreneur who can go anywhere that you want. Now, I would challenge entrepreneurs. We've had clients who, they own a plant or a factory or they make something. You can still make those businesses more tax efficient while you live overseas. We had one guy, he had 200 employees all around the world, including a number of them in the US and Canada, but they did work all over the world in the mining industry. And so he is the brains and he is the sales force, and his executives could be outside of the country and they could, lower their taxes, not to 0, but they could lower their taxes. But he had to take the step of saying, after 30 years, I'm no longer going to be in the United States managing these guys. I'm going to be somewhere else. And so I think that, that speaks to, where there's a will, there's a way is the point. My business, of course, you can run it on a laptop. We've got 100 employees all over the world. It is very remote out of the box. But other businesses can be remote, at least for you. The W-2 employee, that is harder, and a lot of companies, including for tax reasons, don't allow that. So you got to find a way to have your own business of some sort, and that's what activates the U.S. taxes. Dual citizenship or the tax incentives. Because for Americans, you do pay tax no matter where you go. The deck is stacked against passive income investors. So if you're just in Bitcoin and that's all your wealth, unless you can get yourself to be a professional trader, your options mostly Puerto Rico or renounce. A lot of people don't want to move to Puerto Rico because there's so many better places to go. But if you're an American and you want to keep your citizenship and you have passive income, you don't have that many options.
Yeah.
What dual citizenship allows you to do is, number one, I just think in times of chaos and geopolitical, chaos, having multiple citizenships is good. I would like to be able to go to countries and not have to say I'm an American. I mean, one of my citizenships is in St. Lucia. And people say, well, where are your loyalties going to lie if something bad happens? Yes, the great St. Lucia Kyrgyzstan war that's coming. How am I which side am I going to take? It's like, that's the very point in my estimation of being St. Lucian. They are competitive. You can go there and give them a sum of money and they will grant you citizenship. They need the money. You're helping actual people build housing and things like that. And it's a country that's not getting into scuffles with people. And so I think that's just good in this kind of time when the world is increasingly becoming multipolar. I don't want to be American if I'm doing business globally. People see our YouTube channel. They don't see the stuff that we do offline, doing business all around the world. And that's the part I want to grow. I'll be much more welcome in a lot of those countries as a St. Lucian than I would be as an American, especially with, some of the Trump tariffs and stuff like that. Whether you like Trump or not, you might be treated worse as an American if you go to do business in Asia. And I don't want to be treated worse. I don't think you should be held back by your nationality. So dual citizenship protects you from that. It gives you another place to go if you ever need to. So in the Eastern Caribbean, St. Lucians can live in 6 different countries. If you're a European Union citizen, you can live in pretty much 30 different countries. And so taxes, personal freedom, all of that, you've got a lot of choices. But from the tax side, really the way that you would activate the most benefits is by renouncing citizenship, and you want another citizenship to do that. I ultimately chose to renounce citizenship. Taxes were way down the list. It really wasn't the driver. I paid 0 taxes as a U.S. citizen for years by structuring my affairs correctly. It's a bit harder now. I think I personally could still pay 0. The average entrepreneur can probably pay somewhere in the high single or low double digits under the new, more complex system. If you choose to live in your second citizenship country, that might make it a little bit easier to access those tax incentives, but that's not a primary goal. The bottom line is, if you're willing to live outside of the United States for anywhere from 9 to 11 months a year, either in another place or other places, as I do, where I have a number of places around the world, you can get your tax rate down potentially to single digits if you move your business overseas, hire yourself as an employee overseas, retain certain earnings. This is not tax advice, but if you do a number of things, you do not have to give up your U.S. citizenship to dramatically cut your taxes if you're willing to live outside of the United States. Now, I think there's a lot of benefit in being protected by a second citizenship. Gives you access to travel more places potentially, gives you access to more markets. There's certain advantages. I mean, if you have a South American citizenship, there's certain privileges within South America. I mean, so many examples like that. But for me, if you live overseas long enough and you like it, there's going to come a time when you're going to say, why do I need U.S. citizenship? It's baggage. Now, people who want it, it is. Banks are less open to you. Foreign financial investments are less open to you. You get lower returns on certain things. I mean, there's a lot of people that don't want to do business with you. I asked my banker in Singapore, I said, let me guess, you'd rather have the Indonesian rich guy than the American rich guy. She said, not even close. Because she's a banker. They just want money.
Yeah.
Right.
So the guy in Indonesia comes with no strings. They can sell investments. They can do this. They don't have to report back to Indonesia. They could, the guy has to report his wealth potentially where he lives, but the bank isn't on the hook for being sanctioned by the U.S. government or the Indonesian government in this case. So they're like, yeah, we don't want Americans. And guess what? There's plenty of new Indonesians and Vietnamese to come to Singapore, and Chinese give us their wealth. So a lot of people are saying, and this is where Americans don't get, a lot of institutions around the world are saying, we just don't need Americans' money anymore. They're 4 or 5% of the world's population, and they bring a lot of hassles. And there's a lot of new rich people in our backyard. So from my perspective, one of the best reasons to have a second passport as an American is if you go and live somewhere overseas for long enough, you're going to say, why do I need to be American? And, we were talking about certain Caribbean passports, before the show started. I mean, those may not offer visa-free access to the U.S. Yeah. Quite frankly, I've said I have zero interest in returning to the U.S. ever. I don't mean to live. I mean to visit. I mean to fly through. It is too much hassle on a global scale. There's no need for me to do that. And I don't want to. And they probably don't want me to return either. But for me, if you live overseas long enough, you're going to say, you know what, maybe I don't have to return. But if you think you might want to return, well, that's when you want to get like a European passport, either through your ancestry. If you have European ancestry, you could go and live in Ireland for 5 years and you already speak English. So, pay some tax under their non-dom program. After 5 years, you can become Irish. Now you've got a passport. You can travel back to the U.S. generally, as long as you don't do anything to upset the U.S. when you renounce. I mean, that would be one where you could continue to have that access. Other people, high risk, they get, ancestral passports to Italy and Slovakia. I mean, you can also travel to the U.S. with those. So I just think that long term, I mean, the U.S. passport's not what you want to be. And so if you have the second passport early, you're just going to feel a sense of freedom. That's hard to explain. You just feel differently. And you feel like you have options, and nobody can push you around anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty valuable.
Yeah.
And in the conversation that we're having, I hear a lot where you mention that you understand how you feel. And I think that's one thing that in the United States, that a lot of times what we go with is what the majority does. Mm-hmm. As far as like a mentality, if somebody says that this country is crap, then a lot of times what we'll say is it's crap, not even going there. How do you, with the travels that you've done, starting off with, you said you traveled years before you actually settled on staying a couple places for months at a time. For a lot of financial advisors, they advise people who have funds. When they talk about moving someplace, they move to Florida or Texas.
That's the only option.
That's the only option. But that's also a part of a mentality. What advice would you give somebody to start expanding their mindset around understanding exactly how they feel, especially when they go into a country, and actually not going to a country and looking for all the all the
bells and whistles?
Not the bells and whistles, but the comforts of the United States, like the McDonald's
or the creature comforts.
Because I mean, like, I was just talking to my friend from Montenegro the other day. I mean, she reminds me they're one of the only countries that doesn't have McDonald's. I mean, there's McDonald's bloody everywhere. Quite frankly, they're very proud of not having it in Montenegro. You probably do a better job. But a couple things. Number one, and this is something I've really been dialing in more on, not romanticizing things. I come to Malaysia. Yeah, there's probably a few things that you give up. There's a few, comforts, and yet you get other comforts back in return. Number one, you get some of the kindest people in the world, which to me, I'm optimizing for kindness. I haven't been to the United States in a long time, but my goodness, what I hear out of there does not seem like kindness. So I don't want to romanticize if I live in the United States the way it used to be. I don't want to think about my childhood. Those days are gone. I mean, I worked in the radio business as a child. I grew up around the radio business. I can romanticize the days when radio meant something and big booming radio stations. Those stations are being sold off for pennies right now to be turned into sports betting stations. Legacy stations that delivered the news for years now talk about betting on sports with some guy with like a brook, like, the line of the Jets. Like, I can sit here and cry about how KGO in San Francisco was like, nobody cares. So get rid of the romanticism. Things are what they are. And I'd say, if you're going to move, you might as well move. People say, oh, you're going to displace your kids. You got to put them in a new school. They have schools everywhere in the world. The U.S. does not have really some of the best schools. Private school overseas is cheaper. So if your issue is, hey, I can't, okay, it's cheaper to put your kids in private school overseas. And so if you're going to pack up the truck and move from California to Texas, what's the difference of just moving from California to Panama or somewhere else? I mean, language barrier. And yet I have people on my team. I had someone who go to Colombia recently. She doesn't speak any Spanish. She survived. She's back. She's not dead.
Worked out.
Right. and so, by the way, have you seen the articles? I think it was in the New York Times a couple months ago, where people like who moved from California to like Idaho, they don't fit in, and they're moving back. They're conservatives. They believe in lower taxes. They want gun rights, all the things that like Idaho, for example, stands for. They just didn't fit in.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of predicting and not romanticizing those feelings is important. Do you know where they might feel better? Some of these people, like I think if you're from Boston and you want to move to Florida for lower taxes, you would have lower taxes and probably fit in better in Dublin, Ireland.
Yeah.
And it's not really much further, quite frankly, 3-hour flight, 4-hour flight versus 5-hour flight. And I think that, you know, there's probably another country that's more similar to what you want. We romanticize, the California weather. Chile has it, Portugal has it, Malta has it, parts of Greece have it, parts of even Southeast Asia perhaps have it. I mean, there's a lot of places, whatever it is that you want, somewhere else has it. There's 252 sovereign countries and territories. So yes, you're right. What you said was Americans do this thing, this defensive thing. It's like, then just move to Somalia. Yeah, or Greece or Malaysia or, any number of other pretty good places that have more free economies. I mean, I've talked about the country of Georgia. Is it perfect? No. Does it have as many creature comforts? No. Tell you what, if you're single and you want to find someone who's serious and like interested in being in a serious relationship and interested in being a little bit more conservative, it's a good place for that. Now, don't expect anyone hopping into bed with you in the first 2 hours, but like you want more serious, I mean, that's a place you can go, that part of the world. It's a conservative place. And yet, listen, it's a post-Soviet country that for the longest time was outperforming the United States in economic freedom. So we can talk about feelings and we can talk about how I feel more personally free. We can talk about the facts that my taxes are much lower. We can talk about the facts that other countries are beating the US that you never would have thought because you're still stuck in that 30 years ago when radio was successful and the US was great and everyone else sucked. Times have changed. And at a certain point, I kind of have decided, I keep deciding this and then something comes up and I talk about it. I would love to just decide just to let all the Americans who don't agree with me, just stay. It's fine. Cool. I kind of don't want to fight with people anymore.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how many people's minds are going to change. If you never leave, you're probably never going to realize it. Mm-hmm. And that's why I don't think U.S. government employees, a lot of them aren't like at the airport. They're not allowed to travel internationally. Yeah. And that's why when my friend who lives in Thailand comes back, they accuse him of being a child pornographer because they're literally not allowed to go anywhere else to realize that there's plenty of, I was just in Bangkok, one of the most like sexy, fashionista kind of places anywhere in Asia. There's a lot of reasons to move there. There's a lot of successful people. There's a lot of wealth there. But I guess if you never left, the desk at Denver airport, you'd think everyone going there is a creep. Mm. And by the way, what a great way to treat your own citizens. Mm. Nobody else treats their own. I mean, if I go to Thailand and I come back to Malaysia, I'm not a Malaysian citizen. They don't accuse me of being a creep. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just so bothersome how like you won't realize how the U.S. I mean, even when I was a citizen, I flew back to the U.S. for all this time. I remember I went to Italy for 10 days, and I came back from Italy, and I probably wasn't friendly enough to the guy because they do this thing where they pretend to be like your friend or something. Oh yeah, what's going on, bro? It's like I'm just trying to get home. Thanks. And they put the mark of death on your thing on your customs sheet, and then at customs, he's like, yeah, come over here. Takes the whole suitcase, dumps it on the ground. Oh yeah, who goes to Italy for 10 days by themselves? A lot of people.
Why not?
But not that guy. He can't. Right? He's going to stay at the Newark customs thing. And listen, I know it upsets him that I'm no longer, because I'm no longer under his jurisdiction, I'm not sending millions of dollars a year to pay his salary. Mm-hmm. Of course, that would upset him. But I don't set out to upset people. But somehow everyone else is allowed to have rules for themselves. I think we ought to have rules for ourselves. Where do I want to live? Where am I treated best? And not everyone's going to like it. And a lot of people aren't going to like it.
Mm-hmm. And I love that because You're just feeding into our soul. So I just love this. And the thing that I really want to get clear, Wealth Nation, as you all are watching this, right? This isn't like Wealth Nation United States versus the world. This is just exposing options, right? So the same way we tell you to explore your options as far as financial tools are concerned, and which ones have strengths in different categories, and which ones, the Swiss Army knives, which ones you're going to use for what reasons. This is the same conversation that we're just having from a geographical standpoint.
And one of the tools that you have is your passport, and you should use it. There's no reason why if you should have a book full of stamps, you should not have a book full of stamps, because you have the ability to travel. And a point that you were making, Andrew, that really resonated with me was Carmen and I, we lived in Dominican Republic for a year. It was about 4 years ago before we had our daughter, and coming back to the United States, it felt weird. When we were gone for so long, it didn't feel like we were coming home. We felt uncomfortable. We really didn't want to go in the stores, because that's when all the weird stuff started happening.
Shootings and whatnot. And Walmart and Target, we were like, I don't know if we should be in these stores.
So what you say really resonates with us, especially when we aren't in this particular country for a very long period of time.
And also I want to paint the picture too, because the thing that I want to articulate for those of you who are even entertaining going to other countries, what Darius and I did was, at the time we were living in Phoenix, Arizona, shout out to Phoenix, because I know we've all, love the sun out there.
Love it. And the sun rises.
We just looked at our rent and we looked at our bills. And luckily, because of the family history of my family being from the Dominican Republic, we were able to see how much more we could live off of, just from a financial standpoint. And that's where we did the test. We're like, let's see if we can live in DR for a minute. So we took a month and got an Airbnb, and we're like, let's test the waters. And after that month, we were like, there's no reason, because for literally at the time, $800, we had a 1-bedroom, 1-bath apartment in a high-rise, gated community, beautiful security guards, everything. We had a woman who came and cooked and cleaned and did our laundry 5 days a week. We didn't own a car. We could walk everywhere. It just, we're painting the picture in the fact that we were able to do so much more with our money. And at that point, we recognized how much it was costing us to just live geographically, going back to that, living in the United States, as compared to having an actual better lifestyle. We went where we were treated better in the Dominican Republic, just for our personal standpoint, and with all the other countries that we've visited to. We love Morocco. We love Colombia. We haven't been to Asia yet. That's where we need to get to. But the point is just, we've been exposed to other opportunities of where we can live, where our money can stretch better. Not even just from a tax standpoint, just from a day-to-day standpoint.
Let me just touch on that real quick, if I may. There's two big factors people overlook, and then there's one that you touched on, which is important. The two biggest things people spend money on, forget being a multimillionaire. Let's just say you have $100,000, freelance job, business, small business, whatever. You make $100,000. Number one is tax. That's the biggest expense that people just don't even think about. It's a foregone conclusion. Oh, it's the price of making more money. No, what I learned growing up is, because of my parents and my father and their teachings, I became successful following their advice. I don't know that it's because I'm in the United States. Certainly easier than being born in Bangladesh, but again, the scales are evening these days. But you think, you have to pay taxes. That's just not true. And there's plenty of places where somehow they manage on very low taxes, and they have better roads, better bridges, better schools. So the taxes are the biggest thing people pay. To your point, housing is out of control. In a lot of places in the world, you can move somewhere else and dramatically reduce that expense. But what's the third thing? The third thing you mentioned is, and we just put out Live Like a King Medellin, where we were talking to Miss Universe Antioquia, where Medellin is, and she was talking about, $5,000-$6,000 a year is what it costs to employ a maid. How much productivity can you get back? I think people often overlook that. When you have someone living in full time for $5,000 or $6,000 a year, that's not a bad salary for where some of these people are from. $5,000 or $6,000 a year. Take the money you're saving in taxes, take the money you're saving in housing, spend a small fraction of that having someone live with you and handle all that stuff and save you hours a day. If you make $100,000 a year, what's your hour worth? It's worth $50 an hour. Or 2,000 hours a year, how many hours a day can you put back into making more money and leverage up over time? Those are the three factors that, forget being a multimillionaire. Just having a small business income can dramatically change your trajectory. And I would argue this also. If you live overseas, you're going to have some friction in your life. Now, if you live in Dublin, Ireland, probably less than if you move to, Thailand, perhaps. So you can figure out how deep you want to go into the pool in terms of how much culture adjustment you want. But anywhere you move, there's going to be some friction. It's going to cause you to evaluate yourself and your decisions. You're going to realize other cultures might have something to add that's better than yours. And you're also going to refine your own beliefs. It's going to make you a better person. It's going to make you a better business person in terms of making decisions. That will help you make more money in the long run as well.
I love that. Adaptability, right? Because when you can adapt and when you can relate to people on a completely different perspective from a cultural standpoint, like you said, it just makes you even more open and it challenges the way that you do business and the way you interact.
Yeah, even investing in your business. I think the best developers come out of Serbia. The developers for our channel comes from Serbia. And it's because of the everyone has access to the internet. So when you take yourself out of the one country and open your mind to other countries, what you also are exposed to is talent in other countries.
You know what's shocking, by the way? And my parents, I remember, years ago, I was, dating different people. My parents would meet and they'd say, "Wow, you're 23. We know 23-year-old girls in the United States. They're not listening to Chopin and quoting literature and they don't know about geopolitics. Like that's pretty serious stuff." And I mean, I've applied the same thing in my business. I mean, some of my best people are in their mid-20s. Many of them are women, and they're in countries that you probably would have never thought about. And you know what bothers me? And this is what I'm really big about, shattering stereotypes. It really bothers me when someone sees a pretty, 25-year-old girl from some Eastern European country. Oh, she must be hired for her looks. Yeah, you know what? Some of those are the biggest executioners behind the scenes. You get some 40-year-old guy from the West who has, the manager title. They're running circles around him in many cases.
Literally.
And honestly, it's come a thing. I was never, like an uber feminist by US standards. I certainly believe in equality. But, probably something that some people in the US take too far. I will tell you, it bothers me listening to people, particularly in the United States, stereotyping people like that, because there is some truly great talent. And people don't want to acknowledge that. When I say I don't hire Americans, there's a tax disadvantage for me to hire Americans. That's what the US does. That's how they're not competitive. So great, I want to hire them. And by the way, how many Americans know much about what I do? The girl in Georgia, she knows what it's like to get a visa. She doesn't have to get that many visas anymore because the passport's got a lot better, but she at least knows what it's like. She knows what it's like to be surrounded by other countries. I mean, she knows things that help our business. And it really bothers me when people think that, people aren't as good in Serbia or Georgia. There's certain things Americans are good. Americans are some of the best marketers in the world, no doubt about it. But there's a lot of talent out there. And a lot of it's not in the US. And even if it is, you're paying a lot more for it.
Right.
You know what, with what you were just saying, it made me go back to when I did a study abroad in college in Costa Rica, and the host family that I was staying with, of course, the entire family was in the house, and the grandchild was 4 years old. And the grandchild could speak English, French, and Spanish. And they were literally asking me about politics in the United States. And at the time, I'm in my 20s and I'm like, I don't know. And this 4-year-old is like in my face about, well, what do you think about the president? And what do you think about this? And I'm like, what is happening? And that was my first realization that the education that I was getting was probably subpar to what was ever happening in Costa Rica. And to your point, it's just the ignorance that we tend to develop as Americans because we're not surrounded by multiple countries. We're bred to believe that we're the best and that everyone else is inferior. And it was just having, again, these global experiences of recognizing children are light years ahead of adult Americans just because of where they are and the things that they're exposed to and taught in their countries.
The world changes. I think was there a time when the US was the best? Perhaps.
Yeah.
Right? It's gone. And it's partially been squandered by them. And it's partially been, I think, we can rest on our laurels. Because even back when I was born, 1984, look at there's not that many top countries. That list is so different today.
Yes.
And so what happened was, and this is what all the talk about BRICS, for example, all the talk about multipolarity, And Americans going to say, yeah, no one's going to go for that. Let me tell you, I mean, all these places I go, particularly now where they feel shut up by the US. Now, a lot of Europe, I mean, I just saw the poll this morning. The majority of Europeans feel the US is not a good ally. You piss off enough people around the world, the minute they get some wealth, and now they're pissing off people that already have wealth, like the Europeans. The minute they get more wealth, where are they going? In Malaysia, it was always a pretty good ally of the United States. 75% of Malaysians now say we're better off with China. Now, you can say whatever you want, the communist China. Listen, you're entitled to your own opinion. Do you know who's also entitled to their opinion? Malaysians, about what Malaysia does. And they've chosen that they want to be with China, whether you like it or not. And so, that's the way a lot of these places around the world are going. And so what's happened is Georgia, where they were boiling stones for soup in 1993, literally, I mean, I could tell you some of the stories of entire families sharing one can of tuna fish during the day.
Wow.
It is not the case anymore. And you can even look at, we have people on our team, one's born in 1992, one's born in 2000, dramatic difference because of what their parents, went through and kind of where they were at in that progression. It's not perfect. It's not as wealthy as the United States anymore, but a lot of people are happy to stay in their country. They can live more affordably. Maybe they want to go to Europe for a few years, but you know what? We have people who are coming back. And so I just you're seeing things tighten, right? I mean, when it was perhaps the best country in the world, there was no competition, and they rested on those laurels too long. They weren't competitive. They made a bunch of edicts. They told everyone how to operate, including hey, if you're in business as an American, you got to play by all of our rules. I give at least Trump credit for getting rid of a few restrictions on people doing business, Americans doing business overseas. But they just figured we don't have to be competitive. Well, this is the result of decades and decades of saying we don't have to be competitive. The rest of the world went, particularly here in Asia, where they think in generations, not in election cycles. They said, okay, we will be an alternative to the United States. And now the day is here. And that means more options for you. I mean, Malaysia, when I was born, you wouldn't live there. Today, I brought my tailor from Colombia. He said, I've never seen it's clean, it's vibrant, everybody's nice. I've never seen anything like it, he said. And he goes to New York. He's like, this is so much better than New York.
You know what? Mark my words, but we're going to have to hit you up when you're I know you're in Malaysia now, but if you have other travels, we're literally coming to Malaysia because of you. You've already sold it. We're like, all right, I guess we need property in Kuala Lumpur because Andrew said it. And it's just,
that's why we host our event every year, Nomad Capitalist Live. We do it in Kuala Lumpur because it's the most affordable place. It's the best hotel for your money. It's a place you should say, he's here. It's I got to spend an extra month. There's so many good foods to eat. It's a food culture. This is why we have our event here every year. We're bringing the co-founder of Apple, Steve Wozniak, for example. We're bringing the president of Mexico to Nomad Capitalist Live. Amazing. I want people to come and see it because when they come and see it, by the way, forget the medical care. I go for $250 once a year to the hospital on the street, private hospital. You're in and out in 3 hours. They do every test known to man. They rush you to the front of the line. No, listen, I'm very passionate about it. And it's $250. And you talk to a doctor who studied in the UK and maybe lived in the UK for a long time. And then I had to email her the other day. She got right back to me for free.
Yeah. No, wow. we're with you. We're singing that whole song and dance. That's why I'm laughing because I'm
Don't get me too excited.
So someone else, that can preach the good word with us. Because again, going back to just the experiences that we've had, our families were just mortified that we would even consider to have to give go into labor in other countries. Are you kidding? Why would you?
Why would you not?
why would you go into labor in the United States? We're because Colombia charges me $2,000. The United States is going to be $20,000, and I'll have a much better experience in Colombia. By the way,
I mean, not if you go a big city, but the infant mortality rates. Not to be macabre, but I mean those rates are at Somali levels in some Texas counties.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Exactly. Thank you for bringing that up.
You're probably not gonna go to those. Unless you're from there, you're not. Let's be fair. But I mean, to say that this is a totally first world country. Oh, that's nice. That the one part of Georgia's nice. Yeah, but there's no place in the United States that's terrible. Really? I'm from Ohio. Really? Look at JD Vance, the vice president. That's literally his story. His whole parts of the U.S. suck.
Exactly. Now, you know what? There's one thing I want to go back to, because you had some a really catchy life slogan that you said, and I believe it was lifestyle real estate, if I'm saying that correctly.
Mm.
You're like, yeah, I have properties around the world. It's lifestyle real estate. And that was a game changer. That's all we needed to hear, because we believe we're all on the same page here, right? About owning a home. Probably not the best opportunity. And really the lifestyle real estate slogan that you were saying, or even just, the catchy phrase, it made us think about real estate differently from a global standpoint. Because I have to say, for me, we were thinking about buying properties in other countries. And at first I was like, oh, are they going to be rentals? Are we Airbnb? How are we doing this? And thinking about passive versus not. I don't want a house just going through the whole thing. And then listening to some of your videos talking about, well, I just have homes everywhere because I live everywhere.
We don't have to overcomplicate it.
Don't have to.
And I think that when you start reducing your tax rate dramatically, and you say, okay, let's say you have a business that makes $1 million a year, and you were paying $400,000, and now you're paying $50,000. It means every year you're putting $350,000 in the pot. And by the way, once you get to the million, I mean, you kind of find it easier to scale. So next year you're gonna make 2 million, 3 million. You start accumulating a pot of money that you didn't have. And so particularly if you run a business, perhaps as you do and as I do, where you can make investments, but the investments pay off relatively quickly. Like, I'm not investing in plants and fat and stuff that takes 12 years to pay back. If we do something as a marketing expense, it pays back pretty quickly, or it doesn't, right? And so you have all this extra money now. And when I gave up U.S. citizenship, I had fewer restrictions on the money that I had in my business. I was able to take it out more easily than I was as an American. And so, yeah, I said, I can diversify and I can protect my assets by having it in different countries. If I buy property in different places, I can, in many cases, get a residence permit or even a citizenship. So if you buy a property in Turkey, right now it's 400,000, you get citizenship in Turkey. That's a great passport for the global South. All you've got to do is buy a property, hold it for 3 years. And so if you do it the way I talk about, buying secondhand property, my property's up something like, 70% or something. And when my tailor flies from Bogota to Kuala Lumpur, one stop through Turkey, hey, go and spend the day. Here's the key to my house. Go and enjoy yourself. When I fly through Turkey, so that kind of thing. Colombia, you buy a property, you can get a permanent residence permit. It's not quite as easy as it was when I did it, but like a lot of countries in the world, you buy a property, now you have that access. Mm-hmm. And now you can go and live there for the tax benefits, or now you can keep it in your back pocket in case you want to live there in the future, because these things go up in price. Hong Kong used to have a residence permit for 10 million Hong Kong dollars. Now it's 30 million Hong Kong dollars. So if you get in earlier, you buy the asset, you let it sit. My thing was, do I want to be renting these all around the world? As an American, by the way, even more complex to do it. I just said, if I have extra money I didn't used to have, I'm not going to worry about optimizing every dollar of that. I just optimized 35% in my tax example. I'm not going to try and squeeze an extra 2% yield. I'm going to have properties that, for my lifestyle, I'm going to say, the house in Georgia has my wardrobe. That's why the tailor's here. And I'm going to set it up for what I need. So when I go there, I get right down to business. I'm not unpacking. I'm not screwing around. I'm adding an extra 2 days of work everywhere I go by having that property. It might go up in value. It's protecting my assets. It gives me other optionality in terms of residence permits, citizenship, what have you. It might give me a tax benefit if I choose to live there, and I'm more likely to live there and stay there and stick with the plan if I live in a home that I decorated and it's comfortable and I'm not in some Airbnb, freaked out. So all those things together, because for me, aesthetics are important. I want to feel comfortable in my own home.
100%.
Or else I want to go back to where I'm from and give up on the plan. All those reasons for me were, I'm not going to necessarily buy rental real estate. I'm going to take a sliver of what I have and buy property for me in places that I like. And, Colombia is not my number one place, but I love going there for a month or two a year. And it has something that nowhere else offers. Mm-hmm. But, have the house, get the permanent residence permit, let it go up in value. You're building your options.
Man, but the wheels are just spinning. Now I'm like, oh, that condo we just bought, totally different approach now. Everything's changed. Thanks, Andrew. We'll send you the 2% yield. Just refer the advice. I love it.
Now, your channel has recently reached 1 million subscribers. Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
With that, what do you want for Nomad Capitalist, what do you want your legacy to be?
The legacy is shattering stereotypes. The legacy is getting people to think outside of the country and to put their eggs in different baskets. Very simply, just go where you're treated best. And I think that when you look at that, people struggle with the idea of, okay, what's the one place where I'm treated best? When my father looked at potentially leaving the United States with us as kids, he looked at 4 countries. Argentina, it's been through its ups and downs. Right now, it looks like it's heading in the right direction. Chile, been a pretty interesting place. Australia, lost the plot there a little while ago, but New Zealand, obviously kind of the place that all the billionaires go. And I think what his equation was, I'm going to sell my business, sell my house, sell everything, and we're just going to move and start a new life there. You don't have to do that anymore. I mean, that might have been what was required back in 1995, but it's not required now. I live in Malaysia, part-time. Do I keep some money in Malaysia? Sure. But next door is one of the world's great wealth hubs, Singapore. More flexible, lower cost than, let's say, Switzerland, that everybody's heard about. Do I want to invest in Malaysia? Yeah, you know what? Not my best property investments. I'm selling a lot of properties this year that I just don't need anymore, offices, stuff like that. I am going to start renting a few more things. Like, hey, just sold my land in Montenegro. You know what? I'm better off just renting someone else's villa in Greece than building my own house and dealing with the hassle. But the one thing that I'm going to probably lose a few bucks on is an old apartment down the street here in Malaysia. I've always said not the best place to buy property for profit in Malaysia. Do you know where has been good for me is Cambodia, nearby. So you can kind of build your different diversifying tools, right? You're not looking for the one place to go and go all in. By the way, I'm not a citizen of Malaysia. It's very difficult, nearly impossible to become a citizen of Malaysia, but they do accept pretty much every citizen. If you're from the DR, like, okay, bring us your police report from the DR. We don't judge. So, you want to find the best place for every part of your life. Dating, personal life, that kind of stuff. That's another, thing people are looking at. And I'm not saying you can't have some overlap. But I think that there's kind of this idea that you really have to go all in. Now, again, this is where you need your own business. Your company, if you move to Malaysia, your company, Labuan here is a low tax zone, 3% tax. You could put your company there, but you could put your company elsewhere in Asia or somewhere else, and you could pay even less and just, separate your affairs. So what I think the legacy should be is teaching people to go where you're treated best and take the best that everything has to offer, and getting people over this hump that where people have been kind of gaslit by their country, that if you shop around, you should be shamed. And what other thing do you just accept that you should not shop around? If I go to a store, don't go and look at the prices anywhere else. You'd be like, yeah, okay, yeah, right. But we do that with our country because it's your country and you feel this sense of pride. I will tell you this, I was never patriotic. I briefly after 9/11 kind of like, all right, fine, all right, okay. And then I saw what they did. And I'm like, yeah, that's the US I know. And I've just never been patriotic. But I think the more successful you become, the more you should realize it's about you. It's about what you did. I mean, there's people that I went to high school with who were dead of drug overdoses. We're from the same place. Why aren't they multimillionaires? Maybe it's about the person. And I don't say that to make light of it. But I do say it to make the point. People ought to learn about the power of the individual. They deserve to go where they're treated the best. They deserve to have a competitive environment. And you should put your country through the same thing you'd put a sushi restaurant through. If the service is bad and the food isn't tasty, you don't go back. And I just think that people, I want the legacy to be, and listen, the price of success is a lot of people are going to hate you. They're going to make up stuff. A lot of bad stuff will be said about you. But, and by the way, I've had U.S. ambassadors saying bad stuff. They hope I suffer because I'm taking away their salary.
Wow.
But I also meet people all around the world who come up to me and say, hey, I never would have realized this place, or I never would have met my wife if I hadn't gone somewhere and realized there was hope for me. And I think people don't realize it's not just about taxes. How many men and how many women too, in a country like the United States have given up on love because the dating culture is so toxic? What if there's a place you could go and you didn't have to give up in any part of your life? That's the legacy.
Love it.
We need a moment on that. It's the most beautiful thing, right? Because again, it just goes back to conforming. And if anything, you know, that the legacy that you've taught me is to stay open and challenge the norm, challenge the status quo. And every time where I think, oh, you know, I can deal with this, it's like, no, I don't have to deal with anything. With us specifically, right? It's always like, oh, I'm not going to deal with this financial tool. So how do I deal with things from a location standpoint?
Mhm.
And so I just want to thank you again, Andrew, for your time, for this candid interview. It's been really phenomenal. And Wealth Nation, I just hope that you all continue to follow Andrew, watch his content, learn from him, and figure out how you can continue to not only go where you're treated best, but then take ownership, right? Take ownership of your lifestyle. Andrew, do you have anything that you want to plug or share with our audience?
Well, I have the book somewhere around here. It's called Nomad Capitalist.
We'll pop it up on the screen.
It's not a how-to guide,
Mhm.
but it is a collection of stories that I think people can take lessons from. It's a good kind of starting point. Rather than watching almost 3,000 videos, you can read the book called Nomad Capitalist. We're on YouTube. I think the next step for someone who wants to immerse in this is what I mentioned, Nomad Capitalist Live. We have great business speakers and investment experts. We're doing a lot less of the problems in the West now, and more of, here's a guy in Africa who's investing and making money. He's actually doing it. Here's a guy in Latin America. Here's the guy from Asia who's doing AI in Asia and doing, you know, you think the US is leading AI? Here's the guy coming and talking about it. A lot of them, you know, okay, Steve Wozniak you've heard of, Glenn Greenwald, you can watch him on YouTube, but a lot of these guys you can't find. So Nomad Capitalist Live is the event. But here's what I'll tell you just in closing. When you made your poignant comment, I lived in the US, and what I've realized is for me, I follow, you know, I've gotten more in touch with how I feel, as we talked about.
Mhm.
When I'm stressed, you feel it here. You feel it in the chest. Everyone feels it somewhere different. I've really been in touch with how I feel much better physically.
Mhm.
The more I buy into that philosophy of not settling, whether it's an employee and you just, it doesn't quite sit right. Yes, go with that. Go with that feeling, whether it's a country, whether it's a bank, whether it's whatever, go with the feeling, go where you're treated best. And so I think you have to have both sides. You have to have the technical analysis part, but you also have to be like, does this feel right? I think there's a lot of people in the United States right now that they use some faux technical analysis to talk themselves into staying when they know deep down, this doesn't feel right. I don't feel, something feels wrong.
It's in there. Yep. Mhm.
Yeah. And I think you got to listen to that. I think people are tolerant. I mean, I cannot I feel so much physically better saying, no, I'm not going to settle for. It's not go where you're treated a little better. It's go where you're treated best. Nowhere's perfect, but where am I treated best in each part of my life? And we should do that in relationships. We should do that with countries. We should do that with everything. And we should listen to our gut. And I think a lot of people know something's wrong.
Mic drop. That's it. I mean, Darius, anything you'd like to leave with?
You know, we've covered so much in this video. This is probably one of my favorite interviews that we've done on our channel, because we covered so many things around real estate, global arbitrage, passports, travel, business, global business. We covered everything under the sun, I think, in this interview. So Andrew, I want to thank you again so much for your time. I know it is a 12-hour difference between here and
DC.
Malaysia.
Yeah, DC and Malaysia. Yeah.
So thank you again for your time, and we will see you in Malaysia at Nomad Capitalist Live.
I'm looking forward to it.
Join us, fam. Wealth Nation, come join us. We'll all be hitting up Malaysia. So thank you again, Andrew, for your time. And Wealth Nation, remember to own your own lifestyle,
Or someone else will.